Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing some French Country thrift flips using decoupage and IOD. If you're new here and you like DIY and thrift flips, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our first project is this simple white tray. I thought that it had a lot of potential and would be perfect for a decoupage project. But first, after cleaning, I'm going to give it a freshen up. I'm going to give it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Buttercream chalk mineral paint. This is a lovely cream color. It's definitely one of my favorites to use. So I'm going to paint the entire tray in this color. You can find a full product list in the description of this video below, and you can find all those paint and products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Next, I'm going to be using Roycycled flower sack blocks. I'm specifically wanting to use the design with the blue grain sack stripe. I feel like it goes beautifully with this cream tone, so I'm going to cut the paper in half and save the other side for another project. Once I have the design that I want, I'm going to position it in the center of the tray. Now there is going to be a bit of a gap either side of the paper, but I don't think that matters too much. It'll just sort of look like a border. So here I'm just positioning it, and once I've worked out how much I need to trim off, I'm going to carefully trim that off with scissors and we can get started. Today I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's flat clear coat as my decoupage medium. When I decoupage, I always start at one end and I lay an anchor strip. So you can see I've pulled back the paper and now I'm applying some of the Dixie Belle flat clear coat down. I'm just doing a strip of product. I find if I lay it down in sections, I get less air bubbles. So I'm just using my fingers to gently press it down, and then I'm going to use a ball of cling wrap. This helps reduce friction. It minimizes the risk that you're going to rip your paper. So you can see I'm just smoothing it down, making sure there's no air bubbles, and then I'm going to repeat the process. So lifting my paper up, laying down a strip of product, and then laying the paper down over the top and very carefully smoothing that down with the cling wrap. This is called the wet method. I've definitely had the most success with this method. However, there is also the iron-on method where you lay down at least 2 to 3 coats of your clear coat, letting each of those coats dry, and then laying your decoupage paper on top, and then adding some baking paper down, and then ironing on a cotton setting, no steam. A lot of people have had success with this. I have done videos in the past showing this method, but I just like the wet method the most because I know I'm not going to get any air bubbles. So you can see I'm just repeating the same steps each time, laying down a strip of product, then very carefully laying my paper down and using the cling wrap to smooth that paper down and obviously make sure that there's no air bubbles. So this is just definitely a bit repetitive, but I thought it was just helpful for you guys to see the process. This is an easy project really because it's all flat. So it's definitely a good one to start off with if you haven't done decoupage before. So now I've got it all smoothed down. I'm going to come in with another coat of that flat clear coat, and I'm going to go over the top of my decoupage paper. And once this has dried, I'm going to come in again with another coat because this is a serving tray, and I'm going to seal the rest of the tray with the same clear coat. Once my clear coat is completely dry, I'm happy with the tray, but I think that I want to add something extra on the edges, so I'm going to be using IOD's new Adornment Stamp. So you can see here I've taken it out of the packaging and I'm holding it up against my tray, just trying to work out what design would work best. Now I'm going to be scuff sanding my new stamps. You only ever need to do this once, and I'm just using a 220 grit sandpaper for this. It does help your ink stick a bit better. Now that I'm ready to stamp, I'm going to select the design that's up the top. I think it goes perfectly with my decoupage paper. I'm pulling that off the stamp and then I'm going to put it on a smaller piece of plastic to help me do my stamping. You can also use a thin mount for this. So now I'm using some of IOD's permanent black ink. I've turned the tray over and I'm going to carefully position it where I want the stamp to go and then press down. You want to make sure that you always have one hand holding the stamp in place while the other hand applies pressure. And then when you're done, you lift the stamp straight up. These designs are designed to work together and be a continuing pattern, so you can make beautiful borders really easily. This is just such a beautiful stamp to have. I've stamped both sides and now I need to do the ends. This was a little bit tricky to film, so I have turned it on a bit of a different angle here. You can see I'm lining it up along the bottom and then very carefully pressing down. And I'm just going to repeat the same process as I go along the tray. Obviously some of the design will be missing where the gaps for the handles are, but I still just feel like adding this border around the tray really finished it off nicely. Next, I decided that I would use a baby wipe to wipe back some of the ink to give it a bit more of a faded, aged look. Now, my paint is already sealed, so when I did this, I was able to wipe it and ensure that I didn't get smearing, but just be careful if you're going to do this and test it out in a certain area first. I am then coming in with my black ink pad and I'm just hitting the edges of the tray for a distressed look. And here's a look at our finished tray. I'm really happy with how this turned out. That paper is absolutely beautiful and that stamp goes perfectly with it. Let me know in the comments what you think of this project. Our next project is this little wooden sign. I always grab these if I see them at the thrift store. It's better than going and trying to buy a craft blank to work on. I'm going to be using that buttercream again and I'm going to lay down 2 even coats. That's all I'll really need to get decent coverage over the top of this pattern. Thankfully there wasn't any raised elements and I didn't notice any bleed through. Once my sign had completely dried, I grabbed my IOD Brocante transfer and I still have this lovely floral that I haven't used yet, so I'm going to be using it on my little sign today. I did decide that I would cut the wording from the bottom. I just felt like I wanted that to be up in the top left-hand corner. I felt like it would balance the design a little bit better, so I'm going to trim those parts off. And that's the beauty of these transfers, is that you can cut them out and arrange them however you want for your design. Now I'm lining up the bottom to work out how much I need to trim off there. So I'm going to start by trimming off the stem, and then I realized that I would also have to trim a little bit of the leaves off. So I'm just creasing that down the bottom and I'll follow the grid lines on the transfer. The grid lines definitely make it a lot easier to get straight cuts. I'm now ready to use my transfer, so I'm peeling the backing off and I'm going to lay it down on my sign. I'm centering it where I want it to go and then carefully pressing down. Once I have it where I want, I'm going to use my transfer stick to start rubbing and burnishing. First of all, I like to go over the entire design just to get things all stuck down. And then I pick a spot and I start lifting the plastic as I rub. I find that this helps the transfer to release, and it definitely makes the process a bit quicker. Sometimes you have delicate designs that do take a little bit longer. This one did have a few areas that were a little bit trickier to do, and then the rest of them just came off really easy. These are beautiful transfers to work with. So once I have all of my image transferred, I use the backing sheet to rub and burnish the design. And now I need to work on my text up the top, and I'm just going to repeat the same process, peel the backing off and then rub the design down. If you are wanting to do a similar project and you don't have this transfer, you could always use decoupage paper for this, or perhaps even stamps. I decided that I wanted to add a border around the edge, so I'm grabbing that adornment stamp again, and I'm taking the wider design. I've taken that off the stamp backing, I've got it on a clear piece of plastic, and I'm using my IOD permanent black ink. This happens to be almost the exact width of my sign, so it worked out perfectly. So I'll position it where I want it and then press down. Now again, this is a design that is meant to be interconnecting. So once I have my main image down, you can see here I use the corner of the stamp to finish that off. And then I'll use the other end of the stamp once I've got a little bit more ink on it to finish off the design on the left. This was a really easy design to work with and definitely beautiful and detailed. It's definitely one of my new favorites. So I'm going to be repeating the same process and adding that stamp around the entire border of my sign. And each time I'm making sure that I'm going in the same direction. I feel like these adornment stamps could be a real game changer if you're someone who likes to do their own signs. It really takes a plain border and turns it into a feature. I feel like it's definitely going to finish off my design here today really well. That being said, if you don't have access to these stamps, you could always come in with perhaps some stencils instead to achieve a similar result. Once I'm finished adding my border and the ink is completely dry, I'm going to seal the entire sign with Dixie Belle's flat clear coat. This is going to protect my transfer, my paint, and my stamp. And here's our finished sign. I love how this turned out. That floral is absolutely gorgeous. Brocante is still one of my absolute favorite transfers, and that new adornment stamp pairs beautifully with it. Let me know in the comments what you think of this project. Our final project today is this little wooden magazine holder, I think it is. I thought it had a beautiful shape, but I wasn't crazy about the design that was on it, so I took it outside and I'm using some white Rustoleum spray paint to paint it. I thought about using my Dixie Belle paint, but I was worried about a lot of bleed through, and being able to get my brush in the narrow gap to paint the inside would have been quite a challenge, so I did grab the spray paint for this project today. It just made life a little bit easier. It's going to take 2 coats for me to get the coverage that I want. Once my paint was dry, I grabbed the other design from the flower sack paper and I used my fingers to crease lines where I have to cut, and I'm just going around and cutting out my design. I'm making sure that I leave a little bit of a gap so that just in case I've got enough to cover and there won't be any areas that don't have the right amount of paper there. And I'm going to repeat the same process as before. I'm laying down a anchor strip of product and then smoothing my paper down with some cling wrap, and I'm going to repeat those steps until I have all of that beautiful paper down. If you don't have access to this lovely decoupage paper, you could always use a stencil, you could come in with a transfer or maybe some stamps. This is just one idea. As I said in the beginning, I'm not exactly sure what this was used for. I felt like it would be for magazines. It definitely had some weight to it, so I think it could hold them, but I could envision this in a kitchen holding rolling pins or see it as a planter holding some faux flowers. I just wanted to put something beautiful on it so it could be used in a variety of ways. At this point, I had some sections down the bottom that were pulling up, so I grabbed my mister and I misted the bottom part of the paper, and it just helped it to release so that I could press it down into the product. Once my paper was completely dry, I grabbed some 220 grit sandpaper, and you can see I'm using it in a downward motion and then pulling off the paper. This is a very easy way to get a lovely clean line. You just want to make sure that that paper is completely dry, otherwise you risk tearing. Once I got to the top part of the design, I did a little cut in the center and on the curve there, just so that I was able to then come in with the sandpaper and make sure that I wasn't going to tear it off. It just made life a little bit easier adding those little cuts in there. Once I had all the excess paper off and a nice clean edge, I'm coming in with that flat clear coat again and painting over the top of my paper to seal everything in. I then grabbed my adornment stamp again, and the same design that we just used. I thought it would be lovely to add that to the side of this magazine holder and just have a strip of that stamp on the sides, just a nice little touch. So you can see I've added it to some plastic and I've inked it up, and I'm going to turn it and apply my stamp. These are a really easy way to add just a hint of something extra, a little something special to your project. So I'm going to do this on both sides of my magazine holder. Once I added the stamp to both sides, I grabbed my ink pad and I'm just going to go around the edges of the magazine holder, and again we're just giving it that look of distress. And here's our finished magazine holder. I'm really happy with how this turned out. You can see here that I added the rolling pin and the florals, and here I've added more florals to show that it can be used as a planter. I think this is quite a versatile piece, and that decoupage paper has really just highlighted the beautiful shape of the design. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you have enjoyed today's projects and it's inspired you to get out your decoupage paper, your transfers and your stamps, and to give some of that decor at home a makeover. Let me know in the comments if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find all the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.